We are reading from the Adi-lila, chapter 14 in Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapters entitled Lord Chaitanya's Childhood Pastimes. We're up to chapter 14, text 71. Yep. Is it? Wait.
Yep.
Chaitanya Chapalyateki. Oh, yeah. Chaitanya Chapalyateki Prema Sarvajnana Sachi Jagannatha Teki Dina Olahana Chaitanya Chapalyateki Prema Sarvajnana Sachi Jagannatha Teki Dina Olahana Chaitanya Chapalyateki Prema Sarvajnana Sachi Jagannatha Teki Dina Olahana Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya, Chapalya, naughtiness, Deki, seeing, Preme, out of love, Sarvajnana, all people, Sachi, before Sachimata, Jagannatha, and Jagannath Misra, Deki, seeing them, Dana, gave, Olahana, a little rebuke. Translation, seeing the naughty behavior of Lord Chaitanya, the neighbouring people, out of love for him, lodged complaints with Sachimata and Jagannath Misra. So there is no purport to this, so traditionally if there's no purport we just keep on reading. So then we have another little pastime that happens here in the next 4 or 5 slokas, so I'll just read this pastime so we can comment on this one. Ekadina Sachideva Putrere Vartisaya Daribara Geli Putra Gela Pariyaya. One day, Mother Sachi, wanting to rebuke her son, went to catch him, but he fled from the spot. Uchista Gajitjakta Tandira Upara Pasyachena Sukhi Prabhudeva Vishvambara. Although he is the maintainer of the entire universe, once the Lord sat down upon some rejected pots in the pit where remnants of foodstuffs were thrown after they'd been used for cooking. Purport. Formerly it was the custom of Brahmanas to worship Lord Vishnu daily at home and cook food in new pots. This system is still going on in Jagannath Puri. The foodstuffs would be cooked in earthen pots, all fresh and new, and after cooking, the pots would be thrown away. By the side of the house there was generally a big pit where such pots were thrown. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sat down on the pots very pleasingly just to give his mother a lesson. So I'm going to continue on to see what the lesson was, otherwise we're just halfway through there and Aladnath Prabhu might like to go on to the next one. Satya kai kena suchi chunila ganga snana kariyai apivatrahila. When Mother Sachi saw her boy sitting on the rejected pot, she protested, "Why have you touched these untouchable pots? Now you have become impure. Go and take a bath in the Ganges." Hearing this, Tasuni matakakai brahmana jnana vishvimita hai mata Hearing this, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught his mother about absolute knowledge. Although amazed by this, his mother forced him to take a bath. The absolute knowledge explained, purport by Srila Prabhupada, he explains this. The absolute knowledge explained by the Lord to his mother is described by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Amrita Prabhavasya as follows. The Lord said, "Mother, that is pure and that is impure is surely a worldly sentiment with no basis or fact. You have cooked foodstuffs for Lord Vishnu within these pots and offered the foodstuffs to him. How then can these pots be untouchable? Everything in relationship with Vishnu is to be considered an expansion of Vishnu's energy. Vishnu, the Supersoul, is eternal and uncontaminated. How then may these pots be considered pure or impure?" Hearing this discourse on absolute knowledge, his mother was very much astonished and forced him to take a bath. So then it continues on into another pastime there. So it's a very interesting discourse there. We'll discuss that in a minute. But I just wanted to do a little bit of a recap here, because that's only a small pastime, but see, newfangled inventions here. Homes unlock. Ah, yes, here we are. So, we're talking about Lord Chaitanya's childish pastime. So, he's very young, maybe 3 or 4 years old. So, what we can understand is, like in the sloka in the beginning here, everybody's complaining about his bad behaviour. Slightly, how was it put? The neighbouring people, out of love for him, lodged complaints with Sachimata and Jagannath Mishra. Not like, yeah, your son's done this, but just gently rebuking, did you know that your son has done this and that? So what is going on? Well, first of all, we have to understand that Nimai, he was born in Navadvip, as we know, and for what we can understand, that he was born in a community of loving devotees. So actually, I happen to have recently visited that birthplace, as so many others of us have done. And what I found that was really, really interesting was that the tree under which he was born was covered with all these toys. Has anybody ever noticed that? We've all got these little baby rattles and little plastic things. It's just covered in it. So that is just people's sentiments that this baby Krishna, baby Nimai was born here, and they have some loving affection for him as a baby. And so then, of course, we always circumambulate that tree, go around 3 times around the tree, and next to the tree is a replica hut in which Lord Chaitanya was born. It's just a thatched hut, just a small thatched hut. And of course there's a Brahmin sitting outside that hut there, and he's eyeing everybody. Often as he sees some ISKCON devotees, he sort of zeroes in on us and asks for a small donation of 500 rupees just to sort of keep the flag flying there. So of course most devotees are pretty generous and can't say no to this Brahmin. So then we circumambulate the tree, and that's where all the 500 years ago, that's where a lot of devotees were. Lord Chaitanya's associates, the demigods from the spiritual world, they all took birth in that area. And close by, if you actually go, there's 4 places that you can go to, ending with Jagannath Puri, but between there's a Chaitanya Math, where there's a Samadhi of Gorkishore Das Babaji, amongst others, and then closer to Shiva Sangam, where Srivas used to stay. Used to have these ecstatic kirtans there. I was pointing out to some devotees who'd never been there. This is a spot where Lord Chaitanya danced and chanted in ecstasy with all the Pancha Tattva, and they go, really, this spot, only 500 years ago, how good is that? That's ground, no? Really auspicious. That's Sriva Sangam. Dvaitacharya's house is close by there. So there was a community of devotees there. And there was a small community surrounded by the city of Mayapur, and Navadvip was situated there. Navadvip was the general term for the 9 islands. That's a spiritual replica of the spiritual world, Vrindavan. And at that point in time, there were about 2 million residents, it is said. So it had become a centre where everybody was going to because it was a centre of learning. We know that a lot of devotees were born in Bangladesh. Jagannath Mishra's father of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his relatives came from Bangladesh. Haridas Thakur came from Bangladesh, and so on and so forth. So they all came to Navadvip because it was a centre of learning. And students would come to seek out teachers who would be expert in explaining Vedic literatures from the point of view of grammar and also philosophy. But at that point in time, the philosophy was steeped in Mayavadism because Shankaracharya had, the philosophy of Shankaracharya had a very, very great stronghold over the whole of India, even though Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya had begun to propound dualism, that there was a creator, that it was all one. But that was mainly in the south of India, but in Bengal this was very strong. And these Sankaracharya's teachers explain to everybody, it's all one. We're all one with God. You're God, I'm God. We go around, Om Namo Narayan to each other, one, you're God and I'm God. But we're Daridra Narayans, that we're all poor Narayans, that actually we can't remember anything about our last life. We can't even remember what we did yesterday, and we've certainly forgotten we're God. But the fact is that we're God, that we're all light. And then when we attain that enlightenment, that we remember who we are, we become whole part of this creation and this manifestation, one with God, we're the creators. So this is still going on. If you go down to the village and you listen sometimes, you'll be told that we're all light, and when we leave our bodies, we become this pure light, we become this energy of the creation, and we will merge within this creation, and we'll be Satchidananda, we'll be full of eternity, bliss and knowledge. But in the meantime, this material universe that we're in is full of suffering and anxiety, so therefore we're very impoverished gods, and we're not in control of anything right now. And we can't remember how we got here, and we have great difficulty in controlling our senses also. So in Mayapur, this was the case. So people were going around saying, Om Namo Narayan, and I'm God, you're God, and so that was the case. So Lord Chaitanya, he was born in this situation, and he was unrecognised because he was born in the age of Kali, and in the age of Kali it was predicted that there is no incarnation of God. Do you all know that? Trikalagya, that in all the other ages, the Dwapara, Satya and Treta Yuga, that there is an incarnation of God, like Lord Rama was the incarnation in Dwapara Yuga, and in Treta Yuga and in Dwapara Yuga, who was the incarnation? Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? But in Kali Yuga, there's no incarnation, and that is why, because Lord Chaitanya was known as Chana incarnation, a hidden incarnation. So he came as a devotee. So to give these misguided souls not only Satchitananda Vigraha, eternity, bliss and knowledge, but Satchitananda, but he gave them Vigraha, form, that God has form. So, of course, God, he is not forgetful. He remembers everything. He remembers all of his incarnations. And he could actually manifest those incarnations, even though Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as a devotee, didn't like to hear the fact that he was God for two reasons. One, everybody's being called God, so he used to block his ears from that. And the other thing was that he didn't want to accept the fact that he was Narayan because he was acting in the position of a devotee. So he wanted to taste that eternal loving service that the devotees actually rendered unto him. That was his mission, that he came, because as Krishna, he saw that the devotees, particularly through the agency of his eternal loving Shakti consort, Srimati Radharani, there was so much bliss there that he wanted to taste the bliss. So he was born just in a little village, and we read about his pastimes as Nitai and his naughty nature. And sometimes that doesn't equate with the fact that God acts like that. That, you know, you would think that God, because he's the creator, he would be very self-controlled and he would be so regal, just like we have in the case of Lord Ram. Of course, Lord Ram was Ram Raja. And you never hear about him having bad pastimes, breaking pots or being naughty, pinching babies or anything. He was just a perfect, ideal prince. And so was Lord Buddha. But, of course, Lord Ram's still being worshipped as Ram Raja. It was very easy to understand him and his situation. And, of course, Lord Buddha also. But when Lord Buddha was a prince, then he saw that there was so much suffering in the world, and that prompted him to actually begin his teachings of compassion, because actually there was so much animal slaughter going on and the cruelty of that, and the people were becoming ignorant of the fact that there was a soul within the body, and they were just totally absorbed in the bodily consciousness in the name of yajnas and sacrifices, which comes from the Vedas. So his mission was to actually instill compassion and philosophy of ahimsa, non-violence. And to do that, he had to actually take people away from the Vedas. But then Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, of all these incarnations, he was also born in a village, similarly. Just as Nimai was born in a village, so was Krishna, amongst loving devotees. And actually Krishna's pastimes they were far more extraordinary. We hear about these amazing pastimes of Krishna. Why? They were more extraordinary than Nimai, because he was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was the incarnation for the age of dwarf, so he could perform all these wonderful feats, like defeating all these huge demons like Agashura demon, Patana witch, and lifting mountains and that. And even though the citizens, all the residents, were bewildered by Yoga Maya, they just saw Krishna as their beautiful, loving child, the object of their love and devotion. But still, we knew that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Lord Chaitanya, he was the hidden incarnation. But still the similarities were there, because he was Krishna and Radha combined. So Lord Chaitanya, when he was a little boy, he'd do the same thing, just like Krishna would do. Krishna would go and break all break pots in people's houses, steal the yogurt, sneak into virtually every house. No house was safe, no matter how much it was guarded. Krishna would find a way in there. And he would engage with all the boys, he'd quarrel with them and create so much mischief, but they were all really super attracted to him. So in the same way, Nimai Pandit, he would go into other people's houses, eat their food, he would go to the river, he would pull brahmanas under the water while they were saying the Gayatri, and he would annoy the girls who were trying to make some sacrifices where they would get Krishna as their husband. He said, I'm your husband, and so forth and so on. And then it began to build up. He was only a young boy and he was doing this, and then the residents, they would complain. So we've got the sloka here that they would go to see Mother Sachi and Jagannath Mishra, and he would be sitting there on the lap, just this sweet smile, and it would be completely charmed. So the common denominator was that Krishna was actually engaging all his devotees. They were all his devotees. And in this way, he was engaging them by performing these pastimes to increase their ecstasy. So when they'd go and see him, they would just be charmed by this beautiful, attractive, supreme personality of Godhead. So, so this was the mood of Lord. And then later on, when he became a little bit older, he would go to all the residents in the town there, because it was a Vedic system and there were people who had to make a living. There wasn't any supermarkets or anything where you buy everything in one spot. Everybody had something. Just like in the old days when I was a kid, you have to go to a grocer and you ask for a pound of sugar, right? And you get the bag of sugar, put the sugar, weigh it on the scales, here's your pound of sugar, or pound of flour, stuff like that. You know, it was all sort of like, you know, everybody had something to do. If you wanted something stitched up, you go and someone stitched something up for you. Everybody did a little bit. Everybody did a bit, and they all made their living. So Lord Chaitanya would go to these places, and he'd go to places making flower garlands, and he'd ask the flower garland person, give me your best flower garland. And they'll come out with this beautiful flower garland and hand it to him and said, I'm just a poor Brahmin, can you give me a discount? And of course, most of them would just donate the flower garland to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he'd go to the next place, the tailor. I need some fine cloth for my dhoti. What is the finest cloth that you have? And the tailor would bring out this beautiful cloth here, and he said, well, you know, I'm just a poor Brahmin. And he'd get donations like that. So in that way, he'd engage the whole of Navadvip. He didn't miss anybody, not even Kola. What do they call them? Kavecha, Kola Kavecha, is it? Huh? Kola Vecha Sridhar. He had nothing. Virtually he had nothing. All he had was some bananas. He had a banana tree and he sold bananas, banana skins, and just you get this bark of the banana which you can actually also use for soups or whatever. And it's virtually, and Lord Chaitanya would bargain with him too, just because actually Kolavecha was a great devotee of the Lord. He was such a great devotee that actually Lord Chaitanya showed him his original form of Krishna. So this way, that was the mood in Vrindavan. But really the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was to inaugurate the process of the Sankirtan Jagya, the Sankirtan for this age of Kali, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva Gadaranyata. So he began this congregational chanting, and of course there was a big outcry because the Mayavadis, they were so much against this because they thought it was just pure sentiment. They thought it was mundane materialism. Because, the Mayavadi, he thinks that everything is material. The only truth is the personal Brahman. So if any incarnation of God comes, he's just a manifestation, the mode of goodness. Everything is completely material. So there's so many wonderful pastimes there where Lord Chaitanya, to inaugurate the chanting, he defeated the impersonal philosophy of the Mayavadis. And then Navadvip was ruled by Islamics, very strict rule by Islamic, who also decried the chanting of the name of the Lord. God has no name. God's name is great, but we don't know what his name is. And they suppressed the chanting of the holy names. And also Navadvip was filled with a lot of rogues, such as the biggest rogue we know. Hey, Jagai and Madai. And so they weren't the only ones, but they were huge. So Vrindavan Das Thakur, he witnessed Lord Chaitanya's pastimes in the early days. Particularly, he took shelter of Nityananda Prabhu, so he wrote this wonderful book called the Chaitanya Bhagavat. And we have the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which we are reading right now, and quite often in these early pastimes, Vrindavan Das Thakur says, I will not elaborate on this pastime because Vrindavan Das Thakur has already spoken about it at great lengths. So I'll just skip around and just mention it briefly. So obviously just makes sense that we also refer to the Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Srila Prabhupada encouraged us, he glorified the Chaitanya Bhagavat. So we're very fortunate that we have these two books that actually succinctly describe the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is the Lord's pastimes in Vrindavan, that he actually gave so much pleasure to his devotees. And he also transformed so many people into devotees. Just when they had that big protest, that Sankirtan Jagya that went to Chankazi's place because he broke that Madanga drum and he banned the chanting. So Lord Chaitanya defied it. Hundreds of thousands of people with torches, they're all chanting, Hari, Hari. So the place was being transformed. So that was the mood of Mayapur. So we just continue on. I just wanted to quickly talk about this next little pastime here, which I became a little bit bewildered by it. I'll just read it out again so we can refresh our memories. 72. On one day, Sachi, wanting to rebuke his son, went to catch him, but he fled from the spot. Although he is the maintainer of the entire universe, once the Lord sat down among some rejected pots in the pit where remnants of foodstuffs were thrown after they've been used for cooking. Supreme Personality of God is sitting in this sort of rubbish pot. So when Mother Sachi saw her boys sitting on these rejected pots, she protested, "Why have you touched these untouchable pots? You have now become impure. Go and take a bath in the Ganges." Hearing this, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught his mother about absolute knowledge. Although amazed by this, his mother forced him to take bath. So I got momentarily confused because there was another pastime that was just recently that we heard about where Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nimai, he ate dirt, right? Remember that? That was just a few weeks ago. So when he ate dirt, Mother Sachi chastised him then. He said, "Well, why are you chastising me? This is dirt, from dirt we get everything. We get foodstuffs, and this is the source of everything. So why not just eat the source? It's just the same thing. It's all the same." Srila Prabhupada at that particular time described that Lord Chaitanya wanted to make an example Mayavadi philosophy, that everything is one, that we're all one, that all this material energy is one, it's just an illusory thing. And then Mother Sachi explained to him very succinctly, yes, but the dirt is there for a purpose, that it will actually give, if you cultivate it, it will give you all these succulent vegetables and grains and foodstuffs which will sustain you. But if you eat it in its raw form, then you will get sick. He said, Mother, why didn't you explain this to me first? Now I know what is going on. I won't eat dirt again. But what is very important in the purport was that Srila Prabhupada explained that the reason for this was that the Mayavadis think that it's all one, that this material energy is one, that the material energy and spiritual energy is all one. But they do not understand the variegatedness, that the spiritual energy is way beyond the material energy, and that actually we are spiritual in nature, and that is our true constitutional position. So if we misidentify with this material energy, it's just like we're eating dirt. So that was the example that he gave. So now we have Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sitting in amongst all these dirty pots. So for those who haven't been to India, it was just a very natural system, not only pots, but there was clay pots which we ate of, and then we throw them to the leaves. And then the pots, they're only got a certain lifespan, so the Brahmins would cook with these pots, the earthen pots, and then when they were finished, they would throw them in a heap there. And then, of course, there would be still some remnants in the pots. It wouldn't really be considered to be a clean place because the dogs would come and lick the pots, and the pots would be sharp and you could cut yourself or whatever. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was sitting there in the middle, and he explained to Sachimata, hey, look, this is Krishna's energy here. You've just used these pots to cook Krishna's food, therefore they're sanctified, they're spiritual, right? So what is the difference? You've got a pot where you're cooking, Krishna's food, it's finished, but you empty it out, it's still been spiritualized. You put it here, it's still spiritual, so I'm sitting here. What's the difference? So Sachimata was pretty confused there. She said, go and take your bath anyway. Just a tradition. So that is actually quite sort of a philosophical thought that made me think a little bit. And I mean, I haven't got a full explanation. I mean, sometimes to counteract Lord Chaitanya, it used to be that if you counteract Lord Chaitanya's argument, he would present another argument to counteract yours, and you couldn't defeat that one, then he'd defeat his own argument again and defeat it again. But from what my understanding is, it's just like we don't have clay pots which we cook at. We have iron pots which we clean, so that is not really like a relevant example. But what is a relevant example is that we make flower garlands every day. We have these beautiful flower garlands, right? And then we take these flower garlands off, they're around Krishna. So how nice it is when someone puts a flower garland around your neck, you're actually wearing Krishna's flower garland. It's been actually spiritualized, right? But there comes a point in time when that flower garland begins to wilt. It doesn't take long, maybe 1 day or 2 days. Even though we consider it spiritual, we put it in the bin over here, right? And we just let it sort of take its course, because this is the nature of material energy. It is so finely constructed by the Lord that everything actually decays and merges back into its original state, as what the pots used to do also. The rain would come and the pots would become dirt, and they would make fresh pots again. Same with the garlands. That after a while they begin to smell a little bit, you know, so it's not like we offer them to people to put around their neck, say, hey, don't worry about the smell, this is still spiritual. They're taken on another form. So then, of course, their form is that we put them in the garden and they fertilise the garden and so on and so forth. So this is the nature of Krishna's energy, that it is always transmutable, it is also changing. But whatever we can employ in Krishna's service, we use. So actually, so we see the material energy as Krishna's energy, in the sense that we can utilise everything in Krishna's service. So that is my understanding of the philosophy behind that in this little particular sloka. So I think that is about all I have to add to this particular little story that we have here. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to make? Yeah.
Thank you for the class. You're mentioning about even in your time that you correlating it to Lord Chaitanya, where everyone had some skill and all of it just, either he made banana leaf cups, and in your time when someone had some skill. And Prabhupada often says simple living, high thinking. So in this day and age, sometimes it's not practical to. So what is that definition of simple? Because simple for us would be using a washing machine, getting our washing done so we can move on and get on the other services. So some people may argue that's not simple. You should hand wash, you should hand mill your own flour and things like that. But the practical side of it is that people can't really even survive. Both parents are not working.
Very interesting that you've said that, actually, because I've just been reading a book which I thoroughly recommend to everybody to read. It's a book by Jayapataka Maharaj. It's called From Milwaukee to Mayapur, right? And it talks about Jayapataka Maharaj is how he first started out as a devotee, and he went to Canada, and then Srila Prabhupada asked him to go to India. And he had so many pastimes in Calcutta, and then eventually Prabhupada said, go to Mayapur. So when he went to Mayapur, he was living, as we know, he was living in this big thatched cottage there, and they were building the Mayapur first long building there. And Prabhupada went there, and he stayed with Jayapataka Maharaj, and they were just right, the Ganga was really close. I don't know if you went there the first time you went there, it was only like about 100 metres away. We could just go from our land straight to the Ganga, right? In fact, we were worried it was going to get really close and take our land, but then it seemed to go further. So Prabhupada's saying, this is all we really need here. We have some prasadam, we have a thatched hut, simple living, we have the Ganga to bathe in, and we could just stay here and go back to Godhead. This is how easy it is. He says, but the only problem is the people in the West, they will not take to it because they're so much in the mode of passion that they need bigger things. You know, they need big temples and they need big programs. And so this is why we go and preach in the West. So this has come from Prabhupada. So in this sense, this is what we have to use. So simple living, high thinking is there. But for us, it's just yukta vairagya, whatever we can use in Krishna's service. And if we don't actually utilise it for our own sense gratification, it is simplified for us. If we see a washing machine as Krishna's service, it's a washing machine. You know, rather than go to the bank of the river, put your clothes in the river, dunk them, put them on a rock, beat them, you know, and then hang them out to dry, then bring them back. It's simple. Put it in a washing machine. So, yeah, so that was a very nice, poignant instruction from Srila Prabhupada, which I took to heart. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Jai, all glory, Srila Prabhupada.